gotta start, friends and colleagues. It is my privilege to welcome you to 149th edition of the webinar series on Rethinking City that we have been running for the past 5 years. This is the 149th. As a matter of fact, I'm trying to make an event out of 150th webinar, if possible. And this is the fourth and the final webinar in the sub-series called Municipal Governance in the Federal System that we are presenting in collaboration with Center for Multilevel Federalism and Praja Foundation. This is the concluding session of the fourth-part series. It's only proper to bring to your notice that the earlier three webinars of this series were one on structure of municipal governance that happened on 25th March. Second was municipal leadership, happened on April 8, and governance in small and medium cities that happened on 13th May. So this is slightly related. And the fourth one, that is today's concluding webinar, is on intergovernmental fiscal transfers. It goes without saying that this has been quite an absorbing series of idea sharing, learning, asking questions, and diving deep into multiple issues of municipal governance. It's a red hot subject now as the country prepares to realize its $30 trillion economy by 1947, re-examining the role of cities as major contributors to that happening and what is needed to be done to capacitate municipal corporation and municipalities to meet the new challenges of governing, managing, and developing our cities. It is only appropriate that I thank Dr. Balveer Arora ji of Center for Multilevel Federalism, Milind Maske of Praja Foundation, and Professor Tathagata Chatterji of XIM University for their partnership, for their contribution and assistance in managing this series successfully. I must also thank this panel members today, Dr. Ravikant, Joshi. I was just telling him that anytime we need him, we get him. I don't know, this is the fifth or the sixth occasion that he's with us. Dr. Niranjan, Sahoo, Manisha ji, Marulasiddappa.
Very good.
and Dr. Savnik Roy for making time for this session today. Savnik is not there. He'll join us very soon. Let me kind of take one more minute and say that over the last several years, while introducing the webinar series on Rethinking City, as to why we are doing it and what we hope to achieve, I have shared a 5-part narrative, and I've repeated in meeting after meeting. One, that we as people, we as government, we as professionals, academics, political decision makers, and civil society have not understood the gravity, enormity, and complexity of India's urban challenge, that we have not understood it. Two, and that lack of understanding reflects in the quality of cities we have. Be that small or big cities, be that industrial or administrative city, or be it the issues of water or environment or governance or finance or infrastructure or climate change, anything, we look very underprepared to meet the challenge. The third point is that depending on government alone to manage our cities and the urban challenge is not realistic. We want more than what government can offer. And the fourth, which is the heart of this webinar series, is that there are many resources outside the government system in the private sector and even in non-profit sector, if we look for them, which could be tapped to address the urban challenges better. And the fifth thing, this is the sum total of our effort to set up a wider societal partnership to address the challenges of urbanization in this country is the need of the hour. And this webinar series is a very small, very modest effort in building that societal partnership with the government in the center. So with this longish introduction, I hand over to Dr. Tathagata Chatterji to conduct the session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kirti. And good evening, everyone, and warm welcome for the fourth webinar in our series on municipal governance in federal systems, which is jointly organized by the Center for Multilevel Federalism with INHAF and the Praja Foundation. So over the past three webinars, we have discussed the institutional architecture of municipal governance. Then in the first one, then in the second one, we discussed municipal leadership. And then in the third one, the most recent one, we discussed the governance challenges facing small and medium-sized cities. So today in discussion, it's the fourth and the concluding part where we discussed one of the single most important enabler for effective urban governance, that is municipal finance. There is a very simple but powerful saying in public administration that finance follows function. But in reality, the functions can only be performed if we really have finance following it. It is a particularly important issue in the case of federal systems like India, where fiscal responsibilities are shared across multiple levels of government. The effectiveness of urban governance, therefore, depends not just only on the money the municipalities receive, but also how the financial powers and responsibilities are distributed between the center and the state and the local governments. So we are in a particularly paradoxical situation here because on the one hand, we say that the cities are the engines of the economic growth. Two-thirds of the country GDPs are actually in the cities. Yet, urban local bodies control less than 1% of the national tax revenues. Well, over the years, we have seen that the allocation for the urban sector have increased. But again, paradoxically, municipalities have also become increasingly dependent on intergovernmental transfers. So this raises some important questions. Are we really creating financially empowered local governments, or we are creating financially dependent implementation agencies? So now again, we are entering a new phase of urban financing with initiatives such as Urban Challenge Fund and the emphasis on the cities as growth hubs. And also some focus on improving the financial borrowing and market-based financing at the city level. But do we really have the capacity of the cities to address these challenges? So today in the discussion, we are going to have take up some of these core questions. And first of all, I would like to request Dr. Balveer Arora, Professor Balveer Arora, who is the chairman of the Center for Multilevel Federalism and one of the most respected scholars worldwide in the area of federal relations, to give his introductory thoughts on this point. Arora sir.
Thank you, Tathagata and Kirtibhai and my fellow panelists. It's really a pleasure and an honor to be part of this program, this series. As Kirtibhai explained, this is the fourth in the series, and the fact that we are taking up finance is last but not least. It is the most crucial thing, and that is the one that is going to explain a lot of things that we have discussed in the previous three sessions. I would like to thank Kirti Bhai for an INHAF and other partners who have helped us, the Center for Multilevel Federalism, of which Professor Tathagata Chatterji is an eminent member and senior fellow, to ponder over extremely vital issues. As Kirtibhai mentioned, the five principles, a sort of Panchila that he uh, spelt out for us, is something that we need to keep in mind in a wide variety of segments that INHAF conducts through its webinars. Uh, my purpose today is to reflect a little bit on what exactly do we mean by federal systems, because I think it is necessary to clarify certain misconceptions which limit the federal idea, the federal principle to structures of governance. Structures of governance are no doubt important for the implementation of certain concepts, certain ideas. The concept that we are talking about at the Center for Multilevel Federalism is the concept of federal democracy. So when we talk of federalism, we don't just talk of federalism, we talk of federal democracy. And I've had the pleasure of helming a 30-month series of seminars at the India International Center on this precise theme. The idea that we must go beyond center-state relations. We must go beyond the structuring and the functioning of attributions to look at federalism, the federal system, as a federal democracy. Unless we keep the democratic element in mind, we miss many dimensions, and then we come up against walls where we don't understand what is actually happening. Now, the multi-level federalism perspective also emphasizes that the tiers that we talk about, first tier, second tier, third tier, should not imply a hierarchy. Very often, in practice, the powers are seen to be flowing down from the center to the states and down to the third tier. Because of this cascading kind of concept, the idea is that the upper echelons are in some senses dominant. It's that dominance and that hegemony which needs to be questioned, because there are in the federal principle there are certain attributes that are inherent in the so-called lower tiers of governance. And unless we recognize them and we give sufficient importance to them, we are caught in the trap of the framework that we inherited of devolution of powers from a colonial state down with limitations and limited government and so on. We are all familiar with the journey that Indian federal structures took initially, where in the early 50s, when the constitution was ready, federal theorists uh, put it in a category of a quasi-federal system. As this system has developed in terms of its democratic potential, today India's federal democracy stands tall among federations of the world. So that quasi label has been shed, and that is largely because of the fact that the democratic principle was allowed to infuse federalism with a vitality that it would not otherwise have had. It would have been a mechanical administrative arrangement. So I would emphasize the concept of federal democracy, which uh, softens, it doesn't remove, because we live in a real world, softens the hierarchical principle which otherwise would dominate thinking and conceptualization in our efforts to move power closer to where it comes from, that is the people. Power comes from the people and it has to move closer, which is the effort of all of us. And at the Center for Multilevel Federalism is to look at incidentally, the Center for Multilevel Federalism is hosted by the Institute of Social Sciences, which has done yeoman work on Panchayati Raj and rural uh, rural self-government bodies. So we are firmly embedded in this concept. Now, today, what we are looking at is the way in which this objective, I think we have to be clear about objectives, that this objective can be realized through the mechanism of the federal finance that operates, the limitations, the strengths, and the possibilities. I think we are grappling with, after having had this very instructive series of 3 other sessions, for which again I thank Tathagata for having organized them so well. The question that comes in is the gap between nominal and real powers. I think once we recognize that we have to look at the uh, the shadow that falls, as Eliot said, between the idea and the reality, the gap between nominal and real powers is something that we need constantly to be on the lookout for. The idea here is that there were, and I remember my long association with K.C. Sivaramakrishnan, who was secretary at the time that uh, this was drafted, because we were working together with Nirmal Mukherjee at the Center for Policy Research at that time. I was advising them. And he was quite clear, and in his book also, I think he talks about it, that the 74th Amendment was pulled out in a great hurry, so that the basic thrust was on rural self-government, and then it was felt that you can't leave the urban areas. So the planning and the background that had gone into the rural self-government bodies was missing, and hence we can look at, we can detect the defects, the lacunae, the flaws, and put it down to inadequate preparation. The nominal versus actual powers, and the fact that intergovernmental fiscal transfers are impacted by a variety of devices which try to enhance the control of the central ministries over events throughout the country. In this context, I would like us to look at two or three initiatives and how they have affected mayoral powers in the cities. The first is the whole concept of centrally sponsored schemes. I think we recognize, looking at them, that a wide variety of reasons are invoked to deny funding for partisan reasons. Suddenly, the funding stops uh, because of non-compliance, the favorite bureaucratic terminology, non-compliance of some obscure para in the scheme itself. Now, that is one. The second thing that I would like us to ponder about is the whole idea that uh, the functions that are performed by the central government override the attributions of the cities, and then the question of how mayoral powers have been reduced through financial devices. We know that mayors had powers in initially in the early years. Among there are certainly regulatory and statutory differences that can be detected, but the focus in this session is to see how finance has been used to reduce the powers of the mayors. I think that is the crux of the issue, since we are looking at mayoral powers. How has finance been instrumentalized to whittle down the self-government through the mayoral system at that level? And the third thing is the sharing of powers, because, of course, then law and order is a crucial issue, and one could also look at the impact of the police commissioner system on the mayoral jurisdictions and powers, because that creates a parallel power center. And so, again, there is something to be explored from that point. The control over law and order, the police are key determinants in the uh, enhancement or reduction of mayoral powers. So I think with these few uh, items that I would like to flag in this initial presentation before experts that I see there, some of them I know well, uh, the reflection should be, to my mind, with the basic concern of how federal democracy can be further enriched. I think if we have that as an objective, as a goal, then the various functionaries, the officials, the stakeholders, the wielders of power, then fit into place in a conceptual framework. So I would repeat, it's a federal system, it's undeniable, but it is a federal system which is driven by a democratic motor, and that needs to be constantly borne in mind when we are looking at the way in which federal democracy functions. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, and I look forward to listening to the others. Thank you.
Thank you, Balveer sir, for flagging the very important question of federal democracy and finance, because the two has to work in tandem. Because finance is the fuel that runs the democracy, but the question is, can the democratic values be upheld, and finance becomes an instrument to channelize power in a certain specific direction. With this, let me invite Dr. Ravikant Joshi. And here in this webinar series, we are following roundtable discussion mode. I request each of the speakers to kindly restrict in the first round to about 8 to 9 minutes, and so that in the second round we have another 3-4 minutes per speaker. So let me invite Dr. Ravikant Joshi, who is really requires no introduction, because he is one of the foremost experts on urban finance in India and worked extensively in the area of municipal finance, fiscal decentralization, and urban sector reforms. Dr. Joshi, I would like to start by asking you one question. So the question takes off from where Professor Arora was hinting at. The 3 decades has passed since the 74th Amendment has happened. To what extent do you think India has succeeded in creating a financially empowered urban local governments, and what have been the principal achievements? And where do you see is the big unfinished agenda going? Are we really moving towards decentralization, or we are stuck in some kind of a back and forth arrangement? So it's a big question. So it's over to you, sir.
I think you have to unmute yourself, sir.
Ravi sir, you have
Yeah.
to unmute.
Yeah, I have. Is it visible now?
Yes.
Okay. So before I start with this, my small presentation, let me tell you that we haven't succeeded, or after 74th Constitutional Amendment, no way ULBs have got financially empowered. Rather, what Arora have said, that finance can be used as an instrument, correct, to guide it. But here, knowingly or unknowingly, I won't say that it was deliberate, but in last 30 years, the entire IGFT system, because IGFT for municipal bodies started only after 74th Constitutional Amendment, because 74th Constitutional Amendment provided Section 283, Article 283, asking Central Finance Commission to look into the finances of the municipal finance, and also creating the institution of the State Finance Commission. But whatever this has happened, it is so happened that instead of decentralization, I personally feel in last 30 years, it is the centralization, financial centralization which has happened. And empowering municipal bodies hasn't happened after, or urban local bodies after even your, what we can say, independence. In fact, now we will be completing 145 years to the Lord Ripon 1882 Charter of Local Government. Whatever resources were mentioned in the Lord Ripon Charter, not a single new resource has been added to the municipal bodies. So, and not after 74th Constitution Amendment. Arora sir was talking of a federal democracy, and India has moved in that direction. Yes, it may be possible up to state level, but urban local governments are not part after that. Because 74th Constitution Amendment hasn't prescribed the financial powers, the base for these. So no tax has been added, no qualitative fiscal autonomy. In absolute power, some autonomy has been given, means you are this commissioner getting power instead of sanctioning 50 lakhs rupees now to the 1 crore of tender and all that. But mayors, very early part may be having powers, but after 74th Constitution Amendment, actually mayoral powers have got killed because their tenure was reduced, then it has been increased, but no qualitative autonomy has been given. If we look at the financing structure in last 30 years, which has evolved after IGFT coming in, State Finance Commission coming in, and then Central Finance Commission, then as you rightly said, Tathagata earlier, it's 1% only, which is the share of not tax, but entire municipal universe. Not of the only tax, but all non-tax resources, government grants, and everything put together. Municipal finance universe is 1% of the GDP, and it has remained constant for last 25 years. In fact, it is going down. If 16 Central Finance Commission report we see, then it has come down. I will be showing that graph. Then if we take last 15 years of Government of India's budget allocation for the urban sector, including the metro and housing, has been oscillating between 1.4% to 1.6%. But in last 4 years, it has come down less than 1%. So entire Government of India's budget, urban sector gets 1%. And there is a distortion. The basic urban services get less than 0.4 or around 4 to 5. So 0.5% only. So it has, and then own source revenue of the municipal bodies has declined. So this graph, you can see what has exactly happened. You can see it has remained at 1% and is now coming down to 0.74% if we take the latest 16 Central Finance Commission data. Then you can see municipal finance share in the GDP, that has remained earlier constant, that has also gone down. So actually the grants which have come in, or IGFT which has come in, formal IGFT through the Central Finance Commission, centrally sponsored scheme, and State Finance Commission and state scheme, they have replaced and created more dependency for the municipal bodies, because due to political economy and other things, municipal bodies haven't raised their resources. Whatever resources they had, they lost the octroi or a expenditure-based taxation. This second graph will show you, this is the provision, as I said, Government of India's budget. State data is not available. Luckily, I can analyze all the budgets of the Government of India, and you can see, in fact, in last 3 years, post 22-23, the share provided in the budget is going down and actual release is going down. It clearly indicates another malaise or another lacuna in the urban system of their capacity, that money is there, but cities are not drawing that. They are not able to draw it because you have to complete the utilization certificate, then the next installment will come. So you can see the graph that, in fact, this year, 24-25, it is down by 46% revised budget. This third shows you how the combination, whatever money central government is giving, you can see metro and housing getting the lion's share and basic India infrastructure services share on an average 4 to 5%. But last 4 years, you can see it is less than 0.4%. And in fact, last 2 years, it has gone to 0.2% of the that 1.4% or 1%. And this is the last graph, shows how in last 30 years, the things have happened. You can see in 2002, municipal own source revenue was 67% of their total revenue. And today it has come down to 36%. This is the latest small study of Praja of 43 cities. But if we take RBI study, it shows 46% 2 years back, 2024 report of RBI. And then grants, share of the grants or transfers, revenue transfers and the capital grants has gone from 31% to 61%. But as we saw, the total share of GDP has remained to 1%. So what exactly has happened? Due to political economy and other these things, municipal revenue and taking away sources, not giving any new autonomy or any sources, municipal own source revenue percentage going down. Their growth rate is at the half of the, though we are saying city as a growth engine, their own source revenue growth is exactly at the half of the GDP growth of India. So our cities are not capturing the economic growth story of India. And simultaneously, you can see the dependence is increasing. Still, the total share in the GDP has remained same. So IGFT has replaced the own source revenue. And there is another dimension that more and more this devolution is capex based or tied one. Even 15 Center Finance Commission had tied more than 50% of the fund. Luckily, 16 Center Finance Commission has reversed that trend. But 15 Center Finance Commission report was a watershed, that whatever devolution they're providing to the urban local bodies was absolutely tied. 100% tied for the metropolitan governance and 50% or more tied for the municipal bodies. That has been to some extent reversed by the 16th Center Finance Commission. In fact, whatever total urban infrastructure investment in India is happening in urban infrastructure, 85% is based on a capital grants from the state and central government. The municipal share is 15% because municipal bodies do not have revenue surplus to contribute for the capex formation. So and then this capex is a top-down schemes structured at the state level or the national level. So those who have been able to put the projects, they get the money, and even they lack the capacity, those who have put the project, so they fail to draw the money. The conditionalities have shown, even Central Finance Commission report has clearly showed that whatever money Central Finance Commission has provided, the takeaway is 80% or 85%. Because of the conditionalities and other factors, even local bodies are not getting what money was given by the Central Finance Commission. Unfortunately, we don't have a very limited picture about municipal finance because State Finance Commission data, state level municipal data is not available how this is happening. So intergovernmental fiscal transfer has worked, to my mind, in a negative way. Rather, the way Arora said that finance has got, I won't say deliberately, but knowingly or knowingly or unintendedly, it has reduced the powers and the decentralization of urban local governments. No more power was given, no new resource were given. So I will stop at the moment on this and then would go for next round when you ask another question.
Thank you, Dr. Joshi, for putting up everything so very eloquently and with full data. So now I would move on to Dr. Sahoo. So Dr. Sahoo, you have also worked on the broad architecture of fiscal federalism. So from this perspective of federalism perspective, how do you see that the responsibilities and the resources are balanced between the central and the state and the municipal levels? So, and how do we really strengthen the local autonomy and achieve urban development related objectives? Is it actually possible that we treat urban as an infrastructure delivery mechanism and with such limited autonomy? Is
Thank
it
you,
going to work? Yeah.
Professor Chatterji and very esteemed panelist. Also, I want to really thank INHAF, Praja and CMF for holding this. I actually, as a political scientist and a federal, scholar, I would love to give, more probably kind of overview about the design flaws in the 74th Amendment, which is actually which Professor Balveer Arora just made observed in very passing that this was sort of pulled out in a huff in a fast kind of way, because entire focus in the in that 73rd and 74th Amendment was uh, that was a kind of move for decentralization and devolution, and which largely addressed the rural local self governance. So urban was in many way actually it's just kept as a side show, because they need also to bring something to the table, so they just did something in a huff. So I think that that actually continues to have its effect on whether you call it that most of the cities are actually undercapacitated. Mayoral system is completely undermined. Their legitimacy, everything in more than 3 decades. What actually Professor Joshi showed about the fiscal aspects, I can tell about the political and administrative aspects. Nothing has really moved. In fact, mayors have become more like glorified kind of service provider with very little kind of power on appointment of personnel. They are even transfer, promotion, or anything. They don't have any control. It's run by the municipal commissioner and their sort of way. So in a sense, what actually has been the story for last more than 3 decades about the mayoral system, it has similar kind of you can actually draw the same conclusion about the fiscal sort of transfer, because as Dr. Ravikant clearly showed, it has not actually even improved their own tax revenue has not moved more than 1%. And if you just look at globally, even some of the countries like China, probably 2 decades back, they were almost in the similar positions. But China, it has actually moved to 6 to 10% of their revenue locally. Because I frequently go to China and I have studied actually Chinese local government system. They may not have elections and all that, but that fiscal autonomy of their local body is very strong, robust actually, and they generate a lot of revenue because they have been given real power actually to generate their own sort of taxes, levy, imposed levy, and all that. So that something I think the 74th has been was actually deliberately watered down. One, there was no demand because nobody was really talking about cities in the 90s. And then second is that in the last 3 decades, we haven't also seen any kind of push or movement which should largely come from the state level. That is not coming. That's the most unfortunate thing, is that in the city level, you don't have actually leadership. None of them are actually demanding that the mayor should be at the heart of center. People just talked about the Mamdan and all that last year with lot of interest, all that, but beyond that nothing happens actually. So I think 3 4 things I just want to flag. One is we have to really seriously revisit 74th Amendment, and we are actually witnessing a kind of because we are witnessing a kind of greater financial centralizations, largely through GST and several other measures that the central government has started, although it has actually improved the state revenue capacity because they are getting greater devolution, they are getting better air, but they're not passing that to the local bodies, and local bodies are actually perpetually kept financially weaker and dependent, with typically like all your states used to go to the planning council with Jola begging bowl. So it's a kind of I would say it's in something we read about a kind of phase called it's a kind of equilibrium, political equilibrium trap actually, in which you make these institutions very weak, don't give them any power or the thing, and then you tell that blame these bodies, saying that they don't do anything. So we are creating parastatal bodies, we are creating specific purpose vehicle and all that just to make the so I think that political economy, that sort of paradox has to be broken, and they have to be really empowered. Their tax base have to improve if these bodies are empowered. Second thing I feel is that actually lot of municipalities have actually lost really badly in terms of whatever little revenue base they had, like octroi and entry tax, all that they have lost because of the GST. Are they really compensated? States governments are getting that shared sort of way from the center, but are the state governments are passing? So in many ways they are actually municipal bodies are marginalized both from the state as well as from the center, and then the fiscal things are grants and all that happening through finance commission from the central. How much is really reaching them? Because ultimately it passes through the states. So I'm saying intergovernmental fiscal transfer system needs to be also rethought about. The current system is not really working and it's not really empowering these bodies. And then the final thing I thought is something that we have to also think about, the kind of recentralization that has taken place in last nearly 10 years. Now the central government not only controls through GST and other measures the entire financially and most of the lucrative source of revenues, but also you have also other conditionalities, like that cities, even large cities cannot actually borrow from the market that easily. There's so much of conditions imposed by the center as well as state governments, and what state governments suffer from the center, the cities are also suffering similar kind of fate from the states actually, because states also cannot borrow actually freely and all that. They have to also go through this fiscal budgeting conditionality and all sort of other measures, restrictions. The states governments are even more severe on the municipalities and all that. So I think we have to break this paradox. But I think I'll come back to this, some of the issues probably in the next round. I just wanted to say that we need to really revisit 74th Amendment and really have to look at each of these sort of provisions that were made. 18 subjects, just the last point, the 18 subjects which was devolved to the if you look at many of the reports, including Janaagraha's report and all that I read, only 3 or 4 actually subjects on which the municipalities have the real power. No, on other things they really don't have any power, which is a sad actually sort of I would say trajectory of the development in the last 32 years. I'll stop.
Thank you, Niranjan Sam. You have really hit the thing on the nail, because I mean, I particularly found your mentioning that the political equilibrium point. I mean, that's really the key argument. I mean, we are kind of stuck in that situation, and no state government really wants to empower the cities because the money is there in the cities, because most states survive on the cities, and if the cities get empowered, it's being seen some kind of like a zero-sum game.
Cash cow. They're the cash cow actually.
They're the cash cows, yes. And perhaps one way, I mean, it may change. It is maybe after the next census, because and redrawing of the political constituencies, because now at the state level, the drawing of the constituencies are very much in favor of the rural areas. And the urban areas do not have the share of the seats in the state legislative assemblies. I mean, that's really a very key area needs to be looked at. Now, with that, now let me come to Manisha ji. Manisha ji, you have worked very much on the state finance commissions, and I mean, that's really the key operational instrument to transfer funds to the city governments. So maybe, and you have worked in the Karnataka State Finance Commission on urban finance. The floor is yours. Please tell us about your experience.
Thank you, Professor. I think maybe what I can do over the next 7-8 minutes is reflect a little bit on how have state finance commissions done when it comes to strengthening urban local governments, and have they actually effectively met what they were set up to do, and if they have, what has sort of worked, and where they haven't, why do we actually see what is happening. And just one reflection from what the other esteemed panelists were also saying, that I think what we're seeing, uh, rather than sort of framing it as rather than pitting own source revenues and intergovernmental fiscal transfers against each other, I think what we see is a result of that larger trap that Dr. Sahoo spoke about, right? And it's because of that we are in a situation where there is that disempowerment. So it's not so much the fault of the fiscal transfers itself, but because of larger sort of factors that have been at play. And the fact of the matter is, even before I speak about the role of state finance commissions, I just want to take a second to look at why are SFC grants even important to urban local governments. And even if we just look at the sheer magnitude, we do see, for example, in Karnataka, we see that SFC grants in smaller cities are about 60 to 70% of total revenues of these of the smaller town panchayats. Mid-size to large size, we see that they form at least 40 to 50%, because they're in Karnataka, they are even financing salaries of ULGs. And in some states where they don't, for example, Tamil Nadu, Kerala, we see that not only do they help create, not only are they used as untied grants for capital assets, but also operation and maintenance as well. So they are funding a whole bunch of revenue and capital expenditure, which makes SFC grants sort of important, and hence what SFCs recommend quite important. And even if we compare Union Finance Commission grants with State Finance Commission grants, of course 16th FC has seen a significant jump, but if we compare 15th FC grants and before that, we do see that SFC grants are at least 4 times, if we look at per capita allocation to a city, we do see at least SFC grants constitute 4 times more, and that also sort of speaks to their importance in the sort of IGFT scheme of things. Having spoken a little bit about the importance of SFC grants itself, before I talk about how effective SFCs have been, just again pausing for a second on what was the expectation of state finance commissions, right? And as some others have also reflected, the state government really is that crux of what happened, how ULGs are empowered. And SFCs have this unique position of being anchors of fiscal decentralization. In that sense, they are set up every 5 years. We don't have a department of local government like you do in some other countries. So SFCs have that independent sort of vantage point to reflect on the journey of a state's fiscal decentralization. And that, even to the extent that the constitutional provision for Union Finance Commission is also to supplement the what the state devolves to local governments. So it is in that context that we see their role as critical. So if we keep that as sort of our reference point or our north star, we see a very varied experience across states in terms of how SFCs have played their role, right? And if I have to sort of start off with the baseline, one sort of good thing is that SFCs, of course, through irrespective of the political winds in the state, have stuck to recommending equitable, formula based, predictable fiscal transfers to local governments. So in that sort of foundational sense, there has been that kind of delivery on that promise that there should be some kind of formula based predictability of fiscal transfers to urban local governments. If you see Kerala, they have done, of course, they are a bit ahead in the sense that they have comprehensively thought of a devolution index to map out the expenditure responsibility of local governments, right? If you see Karnataka in its fifth State Finance Commission report, they have actually gone further, one step further down, and even recommended that allocation across wards within a ULG should also be determined by some kind of objective factors, because otherwise what you usually see is if there are 10 wards, let's do the budget divided by 10. So they have called for some kind of equitable development. So there are many heartening sort of recommendations which think through some of these different issues. We also see Karnataka SFC recommending that a share of state GST should be devolved to local governments. So there are some of these green shoots that you see in a sort of dry brown forest, for the lack of a better analogy. But having said that, we also see that there has been a, a shortcoming which various panelists sort of alluded to. And what do we mean by that is, urban India is struggling with unprecedented challenges, and expenditure needs have significantly increased. So if we think from that perspective, we don't see SFCs thoroughly, deeply addressing various issues that are emerging. This ranges from rural urban transition. How do you actually support? You have a significant number of rural areas transitioning. How do you address some of these issues? Climate resilience, of course, is over spoken about. So, I mean, that's also something that has specific financing requirements. Then Dr. Sahoo touched upon the issue of parastatals. You have parastatals delivering urban services. In Karnataka, you see this almost outrageous practice of the state government. The state government includes in its SFC recommended grants, it also includes what it gives to parastatals and calls it as SFC grants. So you see some of these practices that you would expect that the SFC should adequately address and recommend solutions for. And these are the places where we see that some of these things are absolutely not addressed in the depth that they should be addressed. And this is where the effectiveness of state finance commissions is sort of questioned in, are they responding to the current realities of urban India? The other thing that we also see is SFCs are independent constitutional bodies. We do see to a large extent that they do operate in that manner, but if we there are some decisions that are made where SFCs are not able to explain the rationale for some of these decisions, right? And that there is in that sense a significant difference when you read a UFC report where there's a clear rationale, elaboration on some of these rationale, but you see that missing. Just to sort of give an example, Karnataka's fifth SFC, which has just submitted its report about a few months back in December of 2025, you see that they have recommended a division of states' resources in the proportion of 75 to rural and 25 to urban. But this has even the third SFC, which was submitted its report in 2011, also recommended a 75-25 distribution. But in that period, you have a it went from 39% of Karnataka's population living in urban to 44 when we look at projections. And definitely it is a lot more than that as of today. Even states like Haryana divide 50-50 between rural and urban. Tamil Nadu Rajasthan does a 25, and Karnataka is at the same level. So you do wonder how some of these. So in that sense, if you look at the question of are they responding to the realities of the expansion of expenditure responsibilities, we can say that there has been a significant shortfall. I'll just wrap up with one final thought on this, that uh, the real question to ask is again something Dr. Sahoo touched upon, that have SFCs been given the enabling environment to fulfill their mandate? And the answer to that really is a no. We and this is illustrated on various fronts. We see significant delays ranging up to 36 months in constitution of SFC. You don't see this kind of delays in constitution of a UFC. Andhra Pradesh, the fifth SFC, was at least constituted after 36 months after the end of the previous SFC. A lot of these are indicative of a lack of willingness to sort of act on time. The Karnataka fifth SFC operated for a period of 2 years, but that was based on 4 6-month extensions. So you don't see a stable 2-year tenure. You see maybe 6 months you prolonged for 4, which does not give predictability for an SFC even to plan its own sort of activities. We see instances of budget and office space not being given on time. So all of these, and of course there's the much discussed issue of data, that SFCs don't have to actually make some of these decisions. All of these sort of result in lack of that enabling environment for SFCs to actually deliver on their mandate, which ultimately affects the design of intergovernmental fiscal transfers as we see it today. I'll pause there and maybe come back to some reflections on way forward in the second round, Professor.
Thank you, Manisha ji, for putting up everything so nicely. And, I mean, it is eye-opener that even in a state like Karnataka, which is one of the most urbanized states in India, that the functioning of the SFC leaves so much to be desired. Now, we have some excellent questions on the Q&A box. So maybe for the next round, we should start with these questions. Firstly, there is a question and from Abhay Pete, that is the fund flow from the Central Finance Commission to the ULGs apart. How do we get the SFCs to be taken seriously? I think maybe Dr. Joshi, would you like to answer this? Because this is a very big question. So would you like to answer this question?
No, because see, it's a political equilibrium issue and the political economy issues. SFCs have, Manisha has said, but Manisha has developed the art of speaking very politically correct. To give the answer, SFCs has been put to the, what we can say, has not been given the due credit. In fact, she mentioned 36 months, but SFCs, some states have constituted after 10 years also, flagging the constitutional provision of every 5 years to be constituted. More than 50 to 60%, their recommendations are not. So unless until there is a political consensus happens about the IGFT and everything, that what we want to do with our urban local bodies, correct? And SFCs do not have that kind of a status, the way Central Finance Commission has, or the way there is a Parliament Act which mentions the qualifications and the experience for the experts to be appointed on Central Finance Commission. And at the national level, we have developed a culture, we can say. Of course, central government can reject the suggestions of the Central Finance Commission also. But a culture and a tradition has been developed that whatever Central Finance Commission says after internal discussion with the central government, but that is accepted, put to the parliament. Even states have not put the action taken reports to the legislation. So if really we want to go for federal democracy, we need to strengthen our SFCs really in letter and spirit. And if require further more amendment to the 74th Constitution amendment or the legislative solution to that. But states have summarily Even there were certain good suggestions by Kerala SFC, very recent 6. Now they have also submitted 7, but not accepted by the state government. And most of the SFC reports, barring what 2-3 examples Manisha said, most of the SFCs have toward the line of the state government. Yes, there is a formula, but that formula also fearing what state would accept and whether it is useful to the states and all that. No SFC has taken economic base of the cities in consideration, except again Tamil Nadu doing SFC doing something, Kerala SFC looking at the equalization aspect. Rest is only just, and on an average, they are sharing 7 to 9% of the state SOTR, state-owned net tax resources. Nobody has recommended even giving more sources to the urban local bodies. So there are constraints, but I don't think Abhayji knows much more. Professor Abhay Peteji knows much more. This question he himself can answer. But we need to think about our entire federal democracy. जो अरोरा साहब कह रहे हैं, that is not at the local government level. It hasn't percolated. In fact, whatever earlier when I 30 years back serving, I have seen my mayors having guts and my municipal commissioner having guts even to go to the court and file a case against the state government. In last 30 years, I haven't seen such kind of any example. Even I have seen certain mayors committed who rejected central level position in the cabinet or in the state level position, cabinet position as a minister. Today, mayorship or local councillorship is a mere stepping stone to go to the state or central level. There is no political capital now left at the local representatives. So I will stop here. I don't have answer, but really entire nation has to think about it. Probably Arora Sahab would give answer for this. Is there any hope for this federal democracy at a local level, third level? Particularly municipal level.
Thank you, Dr. Joshi. I would come to Arora Sahab at the end because I mean he would have a lot of things to say. But for the next question, that is also from Peter Sahab, Abhay Peter Sahab, I would go to Dr. Niranjan Sahoo. The question is, how about the idea of creating a consolidated fund of the local government so that the GST can be shared by the center and the states directly for the purpose of empowerment? I mean, that's a really very interesting idea. So, Dr. Sahoo, would you like to talk on this point?
I think it's a very valid suggestion. So I think having a consolidated, kind of fund, because as we have seen from the speaker after speaker, municipal bodies are perennially cash-strapped. They have no resources of their own, and mostly depend on the grants and whatever the central as well as state governments offer to run their kind of whatever activities they have been mandated. So I think that's a great idea. Only real question is it's like the same analogy of that cat and rat actually who will bell. Question is whether the state governments will if you look at the current political environment in which both central as well as state governments, they're having that cat fight to centralize at their own levels as much possible, and they really are not keen for any kind of devolution or decentralizations in real sense. Actually, whatever you see, actually the centralization is the trend actually, and we have seen the financial centralization, as I said, through GST and all other routes actually happening, and entire thing is now controlled by just one source. So even state governments are at the mercy, and we saw during the COVID actually how badly states were actually put. It was a kind of wake up call. So I'm saying consolidated fund is a great idea, but I think I would say that we should rather pay more attention to the devolution framework, both political as well as administrative as well as the financial devolution. I think 74th Amendment is fundamentally flawed. It by design, by intention, it is actually not really done properly. I think we have to now in some way or other build a momentum, that for policymaker, for the lawmaker to really, revisit, and your cities have to be really given a kind of mandate and, a sort of power that they deserve actually. They should not be treated just, kind of appendage, a kind of bodies. Because today, I mean, you just look at kind of situation we are facing in every city after city, not only about air pollution or the thing, but any basic services are actually, at a great day. So I think we need to really rework on the devolution, this thing, and the financial aid in which, I think rather than having a consolidated fund or the thing, which would look like, more like Jandu bomb for the your head hack or the thing, you need actually to empower these local bodies with, taxation power, to have more power to levy and all that, including the property share in the property tax, and, many other things need to be really addressed. And that means, there has to be a great bargaining, great kind of power bargaining between the cities as well as the state concerned states. So individual states have to really concede more power to the cities, to the municipal bodies. So I think this will happen if there'll be a change in the political narrative. What actually Professor Arora was mentioning about federal democracy, and we debated for 36 months in IIC actually, last couple of years on this, is largely time has come for the, urban politics to really change that grammar of, yeah, because the mayors, the MPs, the MLAs in different cities have to really demand that these cities need to be really put at the center of the politics. They should not be just treated as kind of, cash cow for raising political money for the politicians. So I think they have to really pitch that demand, and that will happen if organically the, cities, the citizens, the, the people who live in those cities also demand that they need actually better representative, better mayors, and, more empowered mayors, so that, the demand should actually take place from that side actually. So there has to be a pressure, and unless that happens, we will not see any improvement in 74th Amendment, because the politicians, the political economy doesn't really work that way. They have no interest actually to really devolve real powers to these bodies actually.
Thank you, Dr. Sahoo, for bringing up this question of the ground level demand. Of course, I mean, without the ground level demand, no politician in the world would like to give up the control. So I think there is now one question directly for Manisha ji. So I would come to that question, and then there are two very big questions which I would come to Kirti bhai and to Balveer sab to address. Manisha ji, there is one question that is, what are the question is from Mamta Jain. What are the barriers in Tamil Nadu to reach the ward level budgeting like that of the Kerala model? Could you reflect on that?
Professor, can you repeat the question? What are the
Question is,
barriers?
what are the barriers in Tamil Nadu to reach the ward level budgeting like that of the Kerala model?
Sure. I mean, I'll sort of talk about it a little bit more generally in the sense that uh, it relates to a few things Dr. Sahu was also saying. Overall, not just in Tamil Nadu, in most other states, we have not reached that level of maturity where budgeting can happen at the ward level, and some of it has to do with, again, these are political questions. Do we have ward committees that are operating, that can come together to reflect on? I can give a technical answer as a public finance specialist and say that no, the budget has to be organized by wards, and there has to be a functional classification of chart of accounts that identifies a ward, and but that is not budget. The process of putting together a budget is one of an expression of political priorities, and if we do not have uh, strong ward committees, if we do not have elected representatives that are actively thinking together of what is my ward going to look like, and that is somehow coming together to shape a ULG's vision. That is the crux of the problem, and it has to do with, and this is and what I'm going to say now is also a reflection on on Mr. Pete's question about why, I mean, how do we sort of move forward from here, is some of, as a relatively younger person in the panelist, maybe I have a little bit more optimism, but public policy is shaped by what we in the public sort of also demand for. So if there has to be that constant demand for how do we operationalize, how do we demand for greater ward committees? I mean, that's just one instrument that I'm talking about, but basically uh, active sort of shaping of what budgeting looks like for, and how many of us actually look at our city budget and think, okay, what does this mean for my ward, and ask questions that relate to it. So I think that's where the actual change, and hopefully we are in a position, at least our vision is that uh, at some point each one of us should be able to, in the budget, locate what is my street, is there money for my street lights, is there money for picking up garbage. So that's the ideal vision, and there's no other way we can get there apart from sort of that kind of change coming together.
Thank you, Manisha ji. Now there are two very big questions. So let me come to Kirti bhai for these questions. Kirti bhai, there is one question that is, where did that question go? Flow from. One question is, why don't we recognize? I think, I mean, that question someone perhaps has got deleted. Why don't we recognize that the 74th has failed and look for a new kind of amendment? And also the second question related to that, and this is a point I think, I mean, Kirti bhai, that you had been advocating for a long time, that is the need for a new urban policy commission, second national urban policy commission. You had worked on the first, you were part of the first national commission on urbanization. So the second question is from Abhay Pete Saab, that I realized that, I mean, should we not empower the NGOs to get them the representations to the municipal committees? And press for the demands. I think, I mean, both these points, I mean, maybe you can give share your opinions.
Yeah, thank you. Do you hear me?
Yes.
No, I think on this, the National Commission on Urbanization is something that I've been not only talking about, shouting about for last 10 years repeatedly. Written to prime ministers, spoken to several, not only National Commission on Urbanization, I've been talking about State Commission on Urbanization as well. Because when National Commission on Urbanization happened 35, 40 years ago, the urban challenge, was very different. The state were in very different conditions. And now I think the state essentially, I think, have much bigger role to play in development. And therefore, both the National Commission on Urbanization and State Commission on Urbanization, the reason is this, that, and this is something that I talked about in the beginning when I was introducing this whole webinar series, that we are not on the track when it comes to managing our urban challenge. And that is largely because we are addressing our urban challenge in a firefighting mode. I think, looking at urbanization in the long-term perspective, cities' growth in long-term perspective, taking care of 870 million people that will be there by 2050, all that requires thinking, new ideas, new perspective, new vision, new institutions. And all that can only happen if you essentially have a way of doing it. Other thing that I talk about when I talk about National Commission on Urbanization is one of the interesting idea was this, that idea came at the highest level, the Prime Minister level. Rajiv Gandhi himself said that if India's future is in cities, we are not managing our cities very well. And we need to kind of manage our cities very well. And then he said, and if you really examine the structure of the National Commission on Urbanization, it was not filled with government officers, largely people from outside the governmental system who were brought in. And they ran the show for about 3.5 years and put together 17 volumes, what I think is one of the best things that we have heard on National Commission on Urbanization. That's number one. Number two, I'm very, very, very happy to hear about the role of the NGOs. I don't know how to talk about this, and the best way to talk about it is to give a specific example. We've been running, and I think there have been 650 NGOs running what was called Childline for the country. It started with 5, and then it grew to 650 child lines in the country to look after distressed children. And this was being done by the ministry through NGOs. 2 years ago, suddenly it was taken away. And now it is being done by the ministry's personnel. Now it comes to, I think, dealing with children in distress. When I met the minister, I give an example. I said, my biggest advantage of running a child line is this, that whenever a staff member goes to pick up a child at the railway station, they address the child as a beta, the way of dealing with the human ways, the love and affection way. How would they will come about? So the whole aspect, the social dimension, the human dimension, the living dimension of cities is not being talked about at all. And we are not looking at institutionalization. So that is the second point that I want to make. And now that you've given me a chance, I also wanted to make 2 observations in the context of discussion that took place. One is this. There has been this last year's budget put forward this idea of Urban Challenge Fund, lakh crore rupees. And I'm just and I think that particular fund essentially is supposed to leverage more fund. Even if you leverage 4 times, 4 lakh crore is not big amount of money for the cities. But is there a way of using this fund? Because it is called Urban Challenge Fund. It is not Urban Development Fund. It is Urban Challenge Fund. So look at the whole challenge aspect of urbanization and come use it. And my last question, and this is a curious question. Many years ago, someone told me, where does the power of Arvind Kejriwal come from? If it was only, I think, mayor of Delhi, would we have this power? Put it reversely, if we were to convert our 6, 7, 8, 10 big cities into city-states, make a such structural change, would they have the powers? We are talking about mayors not having powers. If the mayor of Bombay becomes chief minister of Bombay, would he have the power? Would Bangalore's chief minister have the power? Will they be able to manage it differently? And I personally feel this is a way, because I think, urban issues are so complex. Unless we think out of box, we're not going to go very far. And is it possible to kind of think about these things in an out of way fashion as well? I'll stop there.
Thank you, Kirti Bhai. And now let me come to Professor Arora. Sir, I mean, there are so many questions. Ultimately, at the end of the day, boils down to the question and the quality of federal democracy. So, are we top-heavy federal democracy? Do we really care about local governments? What it would require, I mean, what reform would it require to change the uh, status quo?
I think you've hit the nail on the head that these are the key questions. And I would say to Manisha that optimism is not a prerogative of young people. We are all struggling to try and find ways of generating optimism. I think that is a challenge. How do we generate optimism in an atmosphere where pessimism prevails? And I think what we also have to look at is the question of the freedoms we have of association and speech. If they are endangered, optimism suffers in the sense that there is a withdrawal. There is, for a variety of very comprehensible reasons, that people shy away from advocacy, people shy away from taking position, and so on. I think Niranjan made an excellent presentation. The question of the 74th Amendment being conceptually flawed at the outset is by now widely accepted. I think the question that arises from your presentation is that why in the last 30 years has there been not sufficient momentum to reform? When you recognize that there are deformities, when you recognize that there are weaknesses, and yet there is no major effort to reform, which again brings us back to the same question of the impediments and the obstacles which we have to analyze and we have to face. I was reading the questions by Professor Abhay Patel. Very, very good questions. One of them I replied to in writing, but the others are also there. Very illuminating. And he raises the question of, and I think Dr. Ravikant also mentioned it, of the demand side. The questions that we are grappling with, the demand side, the weakness of the demand side, and that why is it that there is not sufficient force in the demand side? Why is there the what are the impediments to advocacy? I think Kirti Bhai, having been involved in this advocacy for a long time, and Janaagraha also, we have to look at these questions. And I would suggest Professor Pete mentioned participatory democracy, which is a very important and attractive uh, uh, mode of democratic functioning. Collaborative governance is also gaining ground. Now, it needs to be looked at carefully. Collaborative governance would provide some element of participatory democracy, and here the role of civil society organizations becomes crucial in stimulating demand for public goods. I think that aspect is there, demand for good governance, demand for public goods. But there again, let me say very categorically that the latest amendment to the FCRA and have an extremely dampening effect on civil society organizations which are struggling and who are doing good work, but it has a sort of chilling effect, which is part of the answer for the diminishing optimism that Manisha referred to. It's not generational. It is, we see it, that there is, I mean, some of us are experiencing it at first hand, that the forces that are brought into play to dampen optimism are quite formidable. The other question, which also Professor Pete raised, is the attractiveness of central options. Invariably, when you come across two options, the central option is the more attractive. When there is MP lads, what is the incentive to develop at the local level? So the dice is heavily loaded against self-government at the local level for a variety of reasons. I'm not in any way minimizing the responsibility of state governments for not having taken it seriously in many cases. I mean, the notable exceptions we are all aware of, they are cited, Kerala, to a certain extent Tamil Nadu. Karnataka was a torchbearer under Ramakrishna Hegde, but has faltered for reasons that can be looked at. Now the final question that I would stress is that the framework that we have for assessing in a comparative perspective the work of different local self-government agencies, ULGs in this case, in a comparative perspective with a motive or with an objective of drawing out, tossing out, teasing out best practices. I think we need a concerted effort on that where there are best practices, those are highlighted, and those mechanisms, those institutional mechanisms which enabled, I don't know if there is an All India Mayors Conference which meets regularly. I have my doubts, but some of the panelists will enlighten me. But what to say, even the Interstate Council has not met for so many years. So there is the need to reactivate interstate bodies where discussions and views and best practices can be exchanged, and that would be learning from each other, one of the ways of moving forward. I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Arora, for very much, interestingly bringing out these key points and about the Interstate Council and the All India Mayors Forum. We had discussed this point also a little bit in the first webinar when we talked about the municipal structure. And also, we had some discussions about the arrangement that is there in South Africa, where there is a consultation arrangement between the three layers of government. So unfortunately, we don't have that in India. So I think we are almost at the end, and we have tried to have a good discussion with this. Now, I would hand it over to Kirti Bhai for the last word and end.
No, there is no real last word in the sense that it was very rich discussion today. Because this is the fourth and the last session of this series on municipal governance. What I wanted to suggest was this, that we will try and put these four events together in some form and try and bring out, probably a small little publication in terms of the ideas that have come through. And it probably will be very useful because some very brilliant ideas and have been kind of, put forward, and they need to be synthesized and put together in a form they could be carried through. So with that small little kind of thing, thank you very much, especially Professor Tathagata, because you essentially have managed all the four webinars. You're the one who essentially put the panels together, found and invited people to come in. So thank you very much personally to you for this help. And Balveer Saab, you've been extremely wise, I think, and advise and telling us how to go about doing it. And now hopefully we'll find a way by which we could continue this dialogue further, because you, like me at the age of 84, still have lots of optimism left. we need to kind of bring about this. So thank you very much for your presence, for your contribution, and for this effort. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kirti Bhai. Thank you, Ravi Saab. Thank you, Niranjan Saab. Thank you, Manisha ma'am. It was really a pleasure.
Manisha ji, sorry, I think, I still do not know how to pronounce, but thank you very much. You've been wonderful.
Thank you so much, everyone, for having us.
Thank you.
No,
So
it was
wonderful.
lovely.
I think
I'd like to add my word of appreciation for Tathagata, since this is the fourth in the series, but certainly not the last webinar that he is going to organize. So we look forward to working further with INHAF,
Sure.
and Tathagata has done a masterly job in getting us all together for 4 sessions. So thank you very much, Tathagata.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
thank you.
Bye-bye.